What if the thing keeping you stuck was never actually about you? Welcome back to the space where we tell the truth about what's really happening beneath the surface. Overthinking everything and taking things personally isn't just a habit, it's a pattern that quietly seeps into your relationships. It chips away at your confidence, it steals your peace before you even notice. It's the replaying, the rereading, the what did I do wrong that shows up before you even have all the information. A simple pause, a delayed reply, or a shift in tone can send your mind into overdrive, turning uncertainty into self doubt. And the hardest part? It feels real. It feels justified, even like awareness. When really you're carrying weight that was never yours to carry to begin with. I'm Suzie, and this is Signals and Standards. Today, we're going deeper than overthinking, deeper than to stop overthinking, and we're exploring the emotional triggers behind your spirals, the link between relationship anxiety and self perception, and the misunderstandings that keep you stuck in second guessing. This is about self awareness that actually changes how you show up, not just for others, but most importantly, for yourself. Here's what I need you to hear right now. Not everything you feel responsible for is yours to hold. It's not always about you. Stay with us. Welcome to Signals and Standards with Suzie, where we decode mixed messages, elevate your standards, and deliver practical insights that you can act on. I'm your empowerment coach, Suzie, here to guide you from confusion to clarity, helping you reclaim your power and create the relationships and life you deserve. Let's start with something that might feel a little uncomfortable and maybe a little weird, but it's freeing at the same time. Most of the time, it's not about you. How people act and react, decisions other people make, all of this. It's not about you. I know that lands a little sideways at first, right? I get it, because it feels like it is about you. For instance, it might feel personal when someone takes hours to reply, when their tone shifts mid-conversation, when something that started warm suddenly feels maybe a little off. And in that gap, your mind doesn't sit still. It fills in the blanks. You replay the message, you reread the tone, you scan for clues, and before you even realize it, you've built a full narrative where you're the common denominator and the cause. This is what psychology calls personalization. It's not you being dramatic or too much. It's a cognitive pattern where your brain automatically links other people's behavior back to you. Research and insights shared across psychological frameworks explain that this isn't a conscious choice. It's mental wiring shaped by past experiences, emotional memory, personal insecurities, and your need to make sense of uncertainty. Your brain would rather create a story, even an uncomfortable one, or maybe even an untrue one, than sit in the unknown. But here's where it gets a little layered. That reaction is rarely just about the moment you're in at that moment in time. According to some clinical perspectives, emotional triggers are tied to stored experiences. So when you feel that immediate drop in your stomach, that what did I do wrong feeling, it's not just about the delayed text or the off tone. It's your nervous system pulling from every moment you've ever felt dismissed, maybe even misunderstood, or maybe even not chosen. The present moment becomes a doorway, and suddenly the past is speaking just as loudly as what's actually happening right now. So your brain steps in like a detective trying to solve a case. It replays, it analyzes, it connects the dots that may not even belong together. It tells you, if we can just figure this out, we'll be safe. But overthinking isn't clarity. It's prolonged doubt dressed up as problem solving. It feels productive, but it's actually keeping you stuck in a loop. Research shows that this rumination activates the brain's stress response, meaning the more you think about it, the more real and urgent it feels, even if nothing has actually happened and you don't have all the facts. Think of it like this. You're handed a blurry photo, right? And instead of acknowledging that you don't have the full picture, your mind starts sketching in the missing pieces. But it doesn't sketch neutrally. It sketches based on your fears. So that simple, okay, text becomes tense. That silence becomes their rejection, and that pause becomes their distance. And now you're reacting not to reality, but to a version of reality your mind created to protect you. Because that's what is really about, protection. When your mind jumps to the worst case interpretation, it's trying to get ahead of the pain. It's saying, if we assume something is wrong, we won't be caught off guard. But in doing that, it creates anxiety in relationships that may not even exist. You start adjusting, over-explaining, pulling back, or even leaning in harder, all based on something that was never confirmed. And this is where we need to redefine sensitivity, because this isn't about becoming detached or pretending you don't feel things. Emotional awareness is a strength. Being perceptive, intuitive, tuned in, that's powerful. But when that awareness turns inward in a self-critical way, it becomes oversensitivity. As explored in various research and psychological discussions, this often happens when high emotional perception is paired with self-doubt. You notice everything, but instead of observing it, you internalize it. Everything becomes a reflection of you rather than just information passing through. So here's the shift, and it's a big one. Not everything you notice requires interpretation. Sometimes tone is just a tone. Sometimes silence is just silence. Sometimes people are navigating their own internal storms. They're going through something. Something's going on. And you just happen to walk through the rain for a second. And this is where emotional intelligence steps in. Not just as a buzzword, but as a grounded practice. Instead of asking, what did I do wrong? You start asking, what else could be true? You widen the lens. You give yourself options beyond self-blame. That one question interprets the automatic story your mind is trying to lock in. It's not about making excuses for them. No, it's about functioning in a realistic environment. Because when you stop assigning yourself responsibility for other people's moods, behaviors, or maybe even their communication styles, something powerful happens. You reclaim your emotional clarity. You stop carrying weight that was never yours. You stop managing perceptions that were never clearly expressed. What happens next is that you start showing up from a steady place instead of constantly adjusting. Another insight that emerges across mindset and behavioral research is that taking things personally is often linked to a deep desire for connection and approval. You care. You value your relationships. You want to get it right. And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing. But when your sense of stability depends on how consistently others show up, you end up outsourcing your peace. You become hyper aware of every shift, every nuance, every possibility of disconnection. You're looking for that validation. Remember we spoke about that? And really, that's exhausting. Quietly, constantly exhausting. Here's the truth that doesn't get said enough. You can be thoughtful, self-aware, and emotionally intelligent and still not be responsible for how someone else behaves. You can show up with clarity and care and still encounter inconsistency, or maybe distraction or distance or silence that has nothing to do with you, absolutely nothing. So when you feel that spiral starting, and you will because this is a pattern, not a switch, you don't fight it by overthinking harder or blaming yourself. You interrupt it. You pause long enough to separate what you know from what you're assuming. You come back to the facts, not the story. Because clarity doesn't come from chasing every thought your mind offers you. It comes from choosing which ones actually deserve your attention. Let's pause for a moment. We've been talking about how not every action or reaction from others is about you and how easily we internalize it, turning someone else's behavior into our own mental anguish. People are complicated and they carry their own stress, their issues, their distractions, their challenges that often have absolutely nothing to do with you. This isn't about excusing bad behavior. It's about giving yourself the space to take a breath, to pause, to observe and resist the urge to jump straight into the worst conclusions. Real change starts in small moments. The next time you catch yourself assuming someone's behavior is about you, pause and remind yourself that it's about their world, not your worth. Turn your attention inward to your own voice and peace. And if this episode sparks something in you, continue the conversation at powercoachsuzie.com. Many breakthroughs begin with one honest question. That being said, let's move into today's listener question. A listener wrote, "Why do I always feel like I've done something wrong when someone pulls away, even if they haven't said anything?" This question, it lands because it's not just a thought, it's a feeling. It's that drop in your stomach, that quiet tension that creeps in when something shifts and no one explains it. This came up in a coaching session, and the way my client described it was so real. She said the moment someone's energy changed, even so slightly, her mind would go straight into self-blame. She would replay conversations in her head while doing dishes, driving, working, walking, even trying to fall asleep, looking for that exact sentence, the exact tone, the exact moment where she must have messed up something. Then she'd start mentally rewriting it as if she could find the mistake and fix the outcome. But here's the thing. Nothing had actually been said. Nothing had actually been confirmed. She was trying to repair something that wasn't clearly broken. So I asked her one question. I want you to really sit with this too. What if their distance or quiet is about their capacity at that moment in time and not your value? What if it isn't about you? At that moment, you can really feel the shift. Not instant relief, but a pause. Like her mind didn't know where to go next because it had never considered that option. We walked through a real situation she had just experienced. A friend who was usually consistent had gone quiet for a few days. No explanation, no check-in. And in that silence, she had already created a whole story. That she said something wrong, that the dynamic had changed, that something was off between them. But this time, instead of reaching out from that anxious place or continuing to spiral, she did something different. She gave it space. Not as a game, not as a test, but as a way to stay grounded in what she actually knew. A few days later, that friend reached out, not distant, not upset, just honest. They had been overwhelmed, work deadlines, family stress, life piling up all at once. It had nothing to do with her. And that's the moment it clicked in a real embodied way. She hadn't reacted to reality. She was reacting to fear. fear of being misunderstood, fear of being too much, fear of losing a connection without warning. And instead of sitting in the unknown, her mind filled in the blanks with self blame because at least that felt like something she could control. And if we're being honest, a lot of us do this because if it's our fault, then maybe we can fix it. Maybe we can adjust, say it better, be better, do better. It gives the illusion of control in situations where we actually don't have it. But what it quietly does is make you carry responsibility for things that were never yours. So the next time someone pulls back, before you go into that loop, I want you to catch yourself in that moment and gently ask, am I responding to what's real or what I'm afraid might be true? Because that one pause, that's where everything starts to change. Listen, I've been there too. I remember sitting with my phone, rereading a message, scrolling through it over and over, convinced I had shifted something in the dynamic. I dissected every word, every punctuation mark, every little pause, trying to pinpoint exactly what I did wrong. Hours of mental energy spiraling into worry to realize later nothing had actually changed except my interpretation. My mind had taken a neutral moment and wrapped it in a story that didn't exist, like coloring outside the lines of reality. And in that moment, I realized how easy it is to carry weight that isn't yours, to react to fear instead of fact, and how liberating it can be when you finally recognize that the message or the silence wasn't about you at all. I should have just taken a deep breath and let things flow in whatever direction they will flow. Not every shift is a rejection. Not every silence is about you. Sometimes people are simply moving through their own stuff. They may be stressed or overwhelmed. They might have health issues, family problems, all sorts of distractions that have nothing to do with your worth or your actions. And yet, it's easy to let your mind rewrite the story, turning a pause into a judgment or a distance into a personal failing. The key is to separate what's happening in their world from what's happening in your world, so you don't carry responsibility for feelings or behaviors that were never yours to manage in the first place. And this is where we ground it in something simple you can carry with you, something that can shift the way you respond, moment by moment, without overthinking or spiraling. So repeat after me. It's not mine to carry. It's not mine to carry. It's not mine to carry. This isn't about shutting down or disconnecting from people. It's about discernment. It's about learning to recognize what truly belongs to you and what doesn't. When you repeat this affirmation, you're not just saying words, you're creating a pause between yourself and your automatic reaction, a protective space where clarity can rise instead of fear or doubt. You remind yourself that your energy, your peace, and your confidence are yours to steward, and that you don't have to carry the weight of someone else's mood, their miscommunication, or even their stress. It's theirs, it's not yours. Over time, this simple practice rewires your response patterns, helping you show up fully, calm, centered, and emotionally free without taking on burdens that were never yours to begin with. Remember, it's not mine to carry. Overthinking and taking things personally can feel like vigilance, like being responsible or even protecting yourself. But most of the time, it's carrying weight that isn't yours. The real shift isn't learning to stop caring. It's learning to know where your responsibility begins and ends. When you release the urge to internalize every tone, every pause, every shift, you don't just lighten your load. You see clearly. You respond from presence instead of fear. In the end, you're going to show up fully as yourself. From that space, your relationships breathe. Your mind quiets, you feel less anxious, and you finally operate from clarity rather than constant self-doubt. Thank you for spending this time with me today and leaning into a conversation about real emotional clarity and confidence growing when you stop measuring your worth by other people's reactions and start recognizing the value that already exists within you. When that happens, your mind quiets and your relationships feel lighter because you're showing up as yourself, not a version of you trying to earn approval or security from others. You can catch this episode along with quick, practical power shot insights anytime on Signals and Standards with Suzie across all your favorite podcast platforms. And if today's conversation sparked a reflection, a question, or a moment of realization, you can always connect through powercoachsuzie.com. I read every message and I'm here walking this journey with you as you step into clarity, confidence, and self-validation in your life and your relationships. See you next time. For daily inspiration and practical advice, find me on social media at PowerCoachSuzie. Got questions or ideas for the show? Head to powercoachsuzie.com where you can connect with me, explore the blog, or learn more about what I do. This is Suzie signing off. Until next time, keep reading the signals and never, ever lower your standards.